Welcome to The View on Data, a monthly roundtable podcast where women in data share unfiltered stories, career lessons, and real talk about what it takes to thrive in the world of data and tech. Hi, gang. Welcome back to The View on Data, a space for candid, unfiltered insights and career journeys from women working in data. My name is Faith McKenna, and I'm joined today by two of our fabulous co-hosts, Erica Louie and Grace Goheen. And today we're going to be talking about working smarter, not harder, streamlining our data workflows, embracing automation, and creating space for life outside of work. But before we get into that, to remind everybody who our hosts are and the reason for the season, why don't we go around and share what we're most looking forward to at Coalesce this year, DBT's annual Analytics Engineering Conference. Grace, you want to kick us off?
Oh gosh, I'm excited about so many things. And I'm in the midst of all of the planning and ramping up. What am I most excited about? As always, a lot of fun costumes and entertainment planned. I think I'm most excited about seeing how many more people I can convince to do creative or non-traditional things with their breakout sessions and talks. We've got some really fun things planned for the community keynote, some of which may get cut, but that's okay. So yeah, just excited to bring the energy, bring the theatrics, and meet a ton more people in person. One of my favorite things last year was getting to meet a lot of people that I'd interacted with over GitHub and Slack over the prior year. And so hoping to see a lot of familiar faces. Okay, Rick, what are you excited about?
Yeah, that's the best. What about you, Rick?
Oh my God. I feel like Coalesce is the one time where the data team emerges from our caves and then we're like, we're here. Do you want to talk about data? And it's just I always love meeting people in the community and just talking about what they're solving, what problems that they're experiencing, not just from hey, I have this crazy event data that has to be real time versus but it's also hey, our director just got fired and we're trying to figure out what we're trying to do for our team and how we want to be structuring things. And so just also on that more human level. Plus we also just hired a VP of data back in June, and I am so stoked for people in the community to meet him because he's incredible, and I think that he's going to be speaking. And also just having my analysts also being able to have their sessions too and have their first Coalesce.
Their first Coalesce. So special. I love Coalesce. I'm so excited to be back. Same thing as all of y'all said. It's amazing to be able to meet so much of the DBT community in person. I'm excited to see what costumes Grace cooks up. I may or may not have one of my own in the works as well. Completely inspired by Grace, by the way. We gotta give credit to the OG here.
Hey, my inspiration is all from Winnie's elf talk however many years ago, so...
And we always need to give it up for Winnie, the ultimate OG, okay? Can we get her on the podcast as a guest? Dead serious. I think my favorite memory from Coalesce last year was talking to one of my trainees from a previous training group. Shout out to Houston Food Bank. Erwin and I got to have a really nice conversation at the DBT booth about how we both got our start in data because we had bosses who were willing to take a chance on us, call back to our first app. And it was just a nice kind of emotional discussion, and it kind of encapsulated everything I love about Coalesce, which is that it's a reunion and a homecoming and just a great place to connect with the whole community. So if listeners, if you're not signed up to come to Coalesce yet, what are you doing? Join us out here in Vegas, October 13th through the 16th, I believe, right? Yeah. Awesome. Well, our topic today is going to be working smarter in data. I think this is a great one for the gang here because DBT is a really dynamic and fast-paced place to work. Things are changing all the time. And I think if you're not careful in the tech world in general, it is super easy to get overwhelmed and brute force things when you could be working a little smarter. So Why don't we start with you this time, Rick? Can you share a time when you realized you were working harder than you needed to, and what changed?
This is just like embarrass yourself.
I know. It's like there are so many times, like especially in 2023 and 2022, I thought working a lot meant that I was like good at my job. And
Real.
which was like I remember it was like our ARR, and we were trying to redo all of our ARR models, and I would think of an idea and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go with this. This is the structure. And then I would be like, okay, but what about this? And I would spend like my evenings going through it, just trying to like figure out all these different solutions rather than like tapping on the board and being like, the bus sign says this. Remember what the bus sign says. We just need to know each customer's ARR on a monthly and daily level. And I think that it was definitely like me just trying to fix all of the little things when I could have just gone to the people that are producing the data or the people that had requested this view and say, hey, y'all need to fix this process, or this is not doable. But instead for me, it was, no, I need to do everything I can to fit within this deadline. And I have done that so many times. And it's just like that perfectionism in me, and also just like the imposter syndrome. What about you, Grace?
Yeah. I was thinking about a couple of things while you were talking, both like when I worked as a practitioner in data, and then now working as a product manager on dbt core and other dbt tooling. And I was thinking back to so I'll give example of both kind of instances in my life, but the first practitioner based one, it's like a couple that stand out to me. I don't know if anyone's looked at the, oh gosh, what package is it? It's the like audit. No, it's not Audit Helper. It's oh my gosh, no, the one that like refactors your code. CodeGen. Okay, the CodeGen package. If you go into the depths of the CodeGen package, you will find the longest, most horrific regex searching code in existence. Not in existence, but like I spent so long writing this ridiculous regex mapping, essentially to like find where things were getting referenced to generate like import CTs, which was like one of our best practices at the time. And it's so gross and stupid. And I spent so long writing this code because similar to you, Rick, like there's like that perfectionism in my brain that's like, but I could just automate this and I could make it so good. And like at the end of the day, probably would have been actually faster to just like copy and paste the SQL. And like there's a desire in me to like want to make it something that you can like reuse for other projects, but totally over engineered. And it's been funny now working on the new dbt fusion engine, which has like actual SQL comprehension built into it. And I was like, throw that code out. Like there's no need for that code anymore because we understand SQL, and so we can like, we know what you're selecting from and can generate that code. And it's just funny to think back to like the mindset you get in, or like the rabbit holes you go down when you're trying to perfect a problem or make it like generalizable when it doesn't need to be. The other thing that really came up to me when I was thinking about working as a practitioner was, I remember because I worked on a lot of migration projects back when I was on the professional services team at DBT Labs. And I remember a couple instances where during migrations, so like moving maybe from one data platform to another, or like from one tool to DBT, I wanted to like fix everything while we were doing the migration. And there was like this desire of like, this is bad code, or this is like non-deterministic, or there's all these problems, it's not performant. And I made the mistake, I think this was a mistake, of like trying to fix it as I was migrating, instead of doing the migration and then going back and fixing things. And so then it was like, well, this is different data now, but it's because I was trying to fix everything while I was going. And so sometimes like trying to like do too much at once can actually put you in a pretty tricky situation with data, because like you lose out on these like validation checks that you're not breaking other things as you're going. So those are some two, I don't know, just like in the back of my brain, like sweating, embarrassing feelings on this projects. And then I just wanted to mention as well, like now being a product manager and working on like actual DBT tooling, I think this is something that comes up a lot, maybe not over engineering, but like over scoping projects or like wanting to do the absolute perfect thing or the like most optimal version of the thing. And I think that is often a disservice. I think there's like a parallel to be drawn for data work too, but just getting the prototype or an MVP out of the thing that you're working on, smallest scope as possible, to like test it out, get feedback on, is like the best thing you can do, because then you have like the freedom to change your mind a lot about things. So that's been like a lesson for sure during my past couple of years as a product manager now. Okay, I rambled for a lot. Faith.
No, I love that though.
That was healing.
Very healing. And both of y'all have been in the DBT universe so much longer than me. So I think like, what do you all think is at the root of that tendency? Because I think you're describing a really common experience of data practitioners to like want to do the most, to want to really cover every edge case and brute force things sometimes. And I mean, perhaps some of it is just straight up perfectionism, but what do you all think just really drives so many data practitioners to do that? Because I've met so many like y'all, and I myself have been like that too, for sure. And I still am. I mean, who isn't?
Dude, it's the power of DBT, where it's like you want to automate things and you want to write dry code, but also your understanding of this like abstract concept is developing every day. Like I look at models that I have created or like edited 3 months ago, and I'm like, why did I do that? There's so much better ways to do it. And at the same time, it's like you have to also care about quality. And so it's like, should we do these edge cases? But in reality, just do a fucking comment that says, if equals this edge case, here is the reason why we're doing this. And then like communicating it upwards. And I think that a lot of the times, like people don't feel empowered to do that. But it definitely is like, you just could always do something better and faster. And one modeling change can actually sometimes have a really big impact downstream when it comes to cost. But yeah, I think it's just like DBT being very unopinionated in a lot of ways, but allows you to be very opinionated. And those opinions are also loosely held over time.
Yeah, that's actually come up a lot with some of the work we've done to like have a stricter spec essentially in the new Fusion engine compared to core. And it's something I've reflected a lot on when, we've gotten feedback, leading up to the preview period of like, why is this going away, or why am I getting this deprecation warning for something? And it's at this tension of like DBT, the framework is so flexible and so lets you historically, right, has let you like do anything you want with it, which is one of its superpowers, like is one of the reasons I was so excited about DBT in the first place. And I think having that flexibility like makes you want to like build more tooling, build more like custom solutions to your problems. And so it's been like a funny journey reflecting on, okay, should we support like the old legacy way of doing that? Or should we be like stricter moving forward and take a more opinionated approach? And I think that philosophy has a lot to do, like, I agree with you, Rick, like it has a lot to do with why people that use DBT and analytics engineers, I think, like want to get creative and like custom solutioning, and there's ample opportunity for that and instances where that's a really good thing to do. And also sometimes we get into rabbit holes or spirals and end up writing hundreds of lines of regex code for perhaps no reason.
I mean, like, I think sort of, spiritually almost, I love that about data people, that like they do seem to have a very inherent understanding of like the unknowable complexity of the universe, that like there's just always exceptions to everything. There's always edge cases to everything. And we can't predict the way that the world is. And during your workday, at some point you have to draw the line, right? So what are some times where you all, and you could say this either in the context of data work or PM work, because I think both are very interesting. How do you all decide? And I think an example is probably the best way, but like, what's an example of a time where you sort of drew a line and said, like, this is how I know my work is good enough. Like, this is how I know it's past muster and good enough to show somebody.
Oh my God. The MVP. Start off anything with the MVP. It's like, what are you trying to get at? And there are so many times where, shout out Brandon Thompson, my ride or die at DBT. But he and I have had so many evenings where we're on a huddle and we are just thinking of a way to like solve this thing and doing whatever. And then Brandon will say, wait, let's step back. What are we trying to do here?
Yeah.
And it's always that step back. And I always think that like with anything, whenever I find myself tunneling, I always have that MVP in front of me and like the time. Like, is this actually doable? And just then telling the stakeholder, like it took me until I think this past year for me to be able to go to an executive and say, this is what we can give you. I know you want this, but that's going to be like so much, work behind this, and it's just not going to be reliable. This gets you what you want. And so it's kind of also reshaping your own expectation and then being able to communicate that expectation to other people. But then I always have like an ongoing like little list of things of like, this could be better as I go on, where it's just, I have notes and then I say, this opportunity is messed up. I'm going to make sure that like we note that for later. But to always just like parking lot.
I feel like one of the greatest things you could do too is like call out like when things are drafts or works in progress or when they are at their final stage. Like I think you said like expressing like what the appropriate expectations are that you're setting for yourself, but also communicating those outwards so that people know what to expect. This is maybe more PM related, but I know like when I'm writing like a document describing something, if it's in draft stage, like it's getting a huge banner at the top that says like work in progress, draft, like I want your comments and opinions. And I think setting that appropriate expectation that there's still work to be done before it gets to the final polished state that gives you a lot of I don't know, like more trust that this thing is like movable and changeable still.
Yeah.
What about you, Faith?
Yeah, I think so. Some of these things, as a practitioner, I relied really heavily on pull request templates, and shout out to DBT's pull request template, publicly available on the docs. I lifted that bad boy from the docs and brought it to my last job and just modified it for things that made sense to us. And I feel like that was a good way to just sort of agree as a team on what was good enough. Because, data practitioners always want to tinker and always want to make things just like a little bit better. So I think like the pull request template definitely helped to decide what was good enough. And that would detail, like the automated CI checks, but also we had to do some manual checks to make sure that the data we were analyzing was matching up with the things that like our customers saw. And in our documentation, we also, I developed some templates for us to use when we would build a new model that was like 3 questions every model had to answer, which was who made this model? So who's like the technical expert on it? Who asked for this model? So who's the business expert on it? And is this model slated for any upgrades in the future? Like, are we going to leave this in its MVP state for a while, or are we planning to fix it up some more? I would also like to add any like known caveats to the model. And that helped ease my mind a lot because I definitely share y'all's mentality of like, but like, we could fix it up a little more. We could like account for this edge case and that edge case. But having a place to like dump that thought and be like, I know that these edge cases are not going to be captured by this model, and I don't have time to do it. So just know that I know that, and I don't know when I'm going to get back to it, but it is captured in our DBT documentation at least. And my name is attached to it, so someone has to talk to me, and I am not off the hook for these edge cases. So I think like docs and pull request templates were very helpful for me as a practitioner. So thinking some more about like automation and brute forcing stuff versus like DBT's sort of more modular approach to data, what are some times when y'all were able to actually automate some kind of task or quality check? And how do you decide when to use automation versus when you just need to like manually check that something is good, that like your data is matching your expectations?
Is it immovable? Is it like an immovable thing where it is like really consistent? Like, for example, we have this thing where whenever someone joins the company, they need to be granted the correct grants. And even though for Snowflake, it will say, yes, this is your default role for our Okta assignment, it will not grant you the permissions of that specific role. And so one of the things that we actually did was we were able to set up our RBAC so that way there is just a job that runs that says like, hey, we can pull in this metadata that we have in our warehouse and then say like, okay, these people have recently joined, grant them. And it's just a job. It's just an operations job. I think that's like a really good example where it's like automate the boring stuff that are not too critical, because if you automate some things that are like very critical, then you should have alerting around it, and then that builds up tech debt, and then you have to think about like, okay, who's owning that? What would it mean if it goes down? But I also feel like workflows in general, like automating that, templatizing all of that. But with some of our like DBT models, I don't know if like we have like crazy workflows in like that like DBT sense outside of like the ops. And of course, like, testing and and scheduling and all that good stuff. But um some other automation that like we've been working on too, it's just like around when you finished a Jira ticket at the end of the week, automatically just having it say like, okay, these are all the stuff that you had done.
Yeah. To like summarize at the end of the
Yeah,
week?
to summarize at the end, so that way you
Cool.
can also share it to the rest of like the company. Because I now run our analytics function, and so we have a Kanban workflow, and so it's just so repetitive to have to say like, okay, everyone, fill out all the stuff that you've done. Instead, it's like automate. We just have it automated to say like, okay, this is a summary of all the work that you've done. But you still need to be able to communicate what the value of that work, of that shipped work is. And so there's still that, like, you need to be able to communicate it. But in terms of just being able to see the swath in front of you, that is something that we have automated for sure.
Yeah, that's smart. I love that automated summary idea. I feel like I do too much just writing down individually of what I've done every day.
Yeah,
I just
and it's too
completely forget
much.
everything I've done all week.
Just kind of
Do it.
black out wake up on Friday.
I'm like, it's Friday. What did I get done? I think for me,
we're actually
yeah.
working on that right now. Like our entire data team has been working on like, how do we automate PR requests, like PR reviews?
Okay. Are you trying to
That's
have
a-
like as minimal human touch on them as possible?
Where it's like there's some things that you can just check through.
Right.
You're like using AI, and that's one of the things that we're actually trying to dog food right now. And even when there is like an outage, just being able to actually just say like, hey, these are the problem, like this is what happened, this was actually the PR that had caused that. What about you, Grace?
Yeah, well, thinking about like PR templates and like testing, that was one of the things I felt like was such a manual process when I was a practitioner, and like having to do all these manual checks on all of the changes I was making. Even though I kind of knew what was going on, like doing that, taking screenshots, showing them to my coworkers so that I could get like approval on things. And it was something that I really wanted to automate when I moved into the like being a product manager at DBT. And it was like definitely a reason behind I don't know if anyone's used the like advanced CI compare changes feature. It's a part of the DBT platform. It's like one of my favorite things. But it essentially just runs like a comparison between tables in CI and tables in production, kind of outputs an explanation of how things have changed, like what columns are different, what rows are different, things like that. And it was one of those things where it felt like such a efficiency gain of like, yeah, this is like boring rote work that I'm doing over and over again every time I open a PR. And I just sort of want it to like run automatically in the background and give me the information that I need. And so that was like a very exciting feature that I got to work on that kind of provided automation for something that I had historically done a lot manually. And just thinking about other things like that, where it's like, okay, I'm constantly doing the same thing over and over again. How do I instead like get at least a template started that then I can like go in and make edits to? This has come up a lot for me too with like now working on like bug reports. Like, okay, there's a bug with some code either in DBT product or like in a DBT project. And using like AI to start a repro case of that code, of that bug, and try to figure out where it's coming from. That's been a great like Kickstarter for me to like get past that first like, okay, I'm doing the same thing where I'm making like a fake DBT project that has this repro and like it's got all these elements of it. So it's been a big one for me as well recently. Faith, what about you?
Yeah, I think these are so interesting to hear about under some of kind of the cases where I feel like the most so is it like bullish or bearish when you like something? Like if I'm bullish on AI for this sort of thing, does that mean I like it? I can't keep track.
Yeah, bullish is you do like it. It's a bull market versus a bear market. That's
because both of those things to me, I'm like, well, they both seem like they're just going to dig through my dumpster, so I don't know which one is good. But that's like a Colorado reference for y'all. Colorado bears like to go through your dumpster.
If I looked out though and saw a bull going through my dumpster, I think I would have some questions about that.
That's so real. There are no bulls going through dumpsters in Colorado, so I can remember that one that way. Thank you. This is the type of thing where I do feel more bullish on AI, and in other cases I feel more skeptical because there are certain tasks, like you were mentioning, Grace, that do start to feel repetitive, and like my perfectionist tendencies, I think, can lead to me being like, no, it's actually good that I'm spending the time doing this repetitive task 8,000 times. And that's not correct. That's not correct, but it's easy for your brain to trick itself, right? So like I've been experimenting.
It's good to suffer.
Lately.
It's good to
yes. And that might be more
being a woman.
It's more like maybe our puritanical roots as a country. Like I think there's a different podcast there that suffering is noble somehow. But something I've been experimenting with lately is like using AIs on like voice mode to help keep track of different bits of work, which I'm a huge fan of because I'm a big work journaler. At the end of every day, I'll write down, I don't think this totally counts as automation, but I have like a template in my personal Notion that spits out a new work journal for me every day. And it's just 3 things to do every day. It's anything that I'm proud of, what I did today, and what I need to do tomorrow. And that's like pretty quick to do and is at least templatized, if not totally automated. But as my role has grown at DBT, I have my fingers in more pies, which is something I'm sure that you all understand. And it can be hard to keep track of like which pies or which finger is supposed to be in them. And like, so I've been like talking to one of the many AIs that have voice mode available and just talking to it and going, okay, remember when I told you about the tasks that I need to do for my like 4 main Coalesce responsibilities? I did this one and that one. Can you just like list out for me what I have left? And since if you talk to it in the same chat, it'll, remember like your previous threads in the conversation. And that's felt like a nice mental weight off, because I can just go back in, talk to the AI and be like, yo, remember when I said I needed to practice my Coalesce lesson? Well, I did that. So please spit out my list for me one more time so that I can see what I have done and what I haven't done. And I think that's something like AI has generally been pretty good at. I've used it in other circumstances to like make a copy of a database that I'm working on and do it to this template, and it just deleted the database instead. So, not a perfect tool, but but finding the cases where like it is really helpful has like legitimately lessened my mental load at work, which feels like a big win.
Oh yeah. I'm like I'm like an ADHD girly, like did not know until later type of lifestyle. And I, as a manager, feel like I'm constantly context switching, especially when I used to do like some IC work. And I actually have realized that the thing that is better for me is to work around rituals, very much so, like
Yeah.
similar with you, Faith, of like I have a stream deck, which is like I'm gonna mess this up. I have a stream deck. It's like this little thing that has buttons on it, and you can like macrosize the buttons and like press buttons for whatever. And so I have there are 5 buttons across, and so one of them is like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then
Oh,
like my personal notes. And so every Monday I have these meetings, and I press my Monday button, and then all the stuff that I need to do for all the docs, whatever, for that Monday, just pop up, and then I can go through. It's like I go through my day of just like going through like going through each doc, and then just quitting out after I'm done with each part of that day. Um, and I always have like this is what you do, like every like at the end of every day, like review the projects, do all of those things. And so I think that in terms of just like maintaining my schedule, it's just a lot easier because I can just check things off as I go along because I just automate those buttons. And so it's just the first thing I do when I log on is I click that button. Um, One of the other things too is that like AI is really good at collecting things for me that I already know, but just kind of like rewords things. And I think that what I have loved so much about like my VP is I like wrote up this roadmap, and he's like, this is a lot of fucking words, Brick. Like,
real.
and he was like, we had to send a summary eventually to like the executives. And I was like, okay, how do you want me to do this? It could be in themes, it could be whatever. And he's like, yeah, themes sound good. And he was like, just throw it into like an AI and just like do that. And same thing with like the end of the week summary for my team. He's like, just use some LLMs and just feed it that data and we're good. And so I think that those are like some of the workflows that I do. But yeah, that's one of the good benefits of AI.
Yeah, can we talk about context switching for a little bit here? Because there is, I think like this is such an important skill for people to develop well working in any profession, much less data. And the struggle that I have with this is as like my role as a lead instructor has grown, like the last 7 or 8 months, all I have cared about is DBT Canvas, our drag and drop experience that I may or may not wear a Bob Ross costume for at Coalesce. No guarantees on the wig. If you can't tell, I have a really large head and wigs don't fit me, so probably no wig. But in probably the first like 6 months of me being in this Canvas focused role, and we're 8 or 9 months into it now, I just tuned out anything that wasn't Canvas. And so by the time we got to spring launch and we were talking about DBT Fusion, I was like, I will get to that later. All I care about is DBT Canvas right now. Like that is my mission. That is everything that I care about. And I'm like slowly starting to switch my context into Fusion to work on training materials for it. And luckily, DBT is full of a lot of smart people and good resources, so it's very possible to catch up and learn. But I think a failure mode I have is getting so laser focused on something and almost like being a little too ruthless with boundaries around it, where I'm like, if it's not Canvas, I don't care. And that does like create some more work in the future to like catch up and then care about it. So what are some ways that y'all decide where your boundaries around context are? Because if you context switch too much, of course, like you lose your ability to focus that well on any given one. But sometimes you do have to like keep your, I don't know, like your aperture wide enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. I struggle with this a lot, in part because back before I was project manager, I was doing a lot of consulting work with DBT. And so I would have like multiple different customers that I was working with at any given time. And so I'd have to like download all of the context of their DBT project into my brain for like an hour-long Zoom call. And then, okay, next Zoom call, it's like a whole other context.
Yeah.
And that was like fantastic training ground, I think, for figuring out how to do the context switching game. Something I found to be really valuable, and maybe this is just based on my own personal tendencies, but I'm like very easily distracted. If you looked at my computer right now, you would see that I have so many tabs open and so many windows. And in my brain, I'm like, oh, but I'll close out the tab when I'm done with it. And then tabs will live for months and months until my computer forces a restart and I lose them all and I cry. So like having like I'm just like, oh, if something pops up, like I want to like look at it and read it and understand it. And I think that is like can be very overwhelming for my brain. And so I try to do a lot more like time box focusing, where I'm saying like Wednesday, today is the day I'm focused on, like we're working on building user defined functions in DBT core and DBT fusion across both of the engines right now. That's like one of the initiatives I'm heading. And it's like, okay, all Wednesday, I'm going to focus on that. And maybe I can't do a full day, but like this, like certain hours, chunk of hours. And I think having a bit more control over like, okay, I'm focused in on this thing. I'm doing kind of what you described, Faith, is like, I'm like, you can't look at anything else except for your UDFs right now. But doing that in like time boxed sections of my day. And then, okay, now I'm ready to context switch and making the active decision to switch over to a different thing rather than letting myself get pinged constantly. I think there is a tendency, I don't know if y'all have this too, of feeling like you have to respond to everything. You have to be like so on it. Anytime anyone has a question about anything, like you have to immediately jump. They need like you to respond right away. And I found that was actually, again, causing me to be less productive because every time I would get pinged, I'd like immediately context switch into whatever someone was messaging me about. And I think take an approach where I'm like, okay, like I will get to that response when I am in that mode, unless it is like urgent. And of course there are reasons why you would need to break that foundation. But yeah, just providing a bit more like time structure to, and like opting into context switching when I do it. Cause we all have to do it kind of constantly. Like no matter what job you have, you're going to be switching up what you're thinking about pretty often.
So I'm hearing like taking sort of a active approach to, I'm going to ruthlessly focus for a determined amount of time, and then I'm going to actively context switch instead of getting a random Slack DM that's like, hey, by the way, I have this question on a completely different topic. That is kind of more actively strengthening your context switching muscle. Does that sound like an accurate summary?
Yeah, that's right. And I think maybe back to the first thing we talked about of like over engineering or like rabbit holing down these things, like having the time box also helps you prevent from spending too much time on something that shouldn't be taking up the majority of your time, right? And like so thinking through how you want to balance out your schedule and your time and then actually enforcing that in practice.
Yeah, I love this. How do you think about this, Rick?
I'm also a big fan of time boxing. So I shit you not, I had spent an entire weekend going through all of the different tools and all the different stuff I use to track my work life and then my personal life. and I mapped it out, and I saw like the overlaps of how I use certain tools, but also a need for separation. And so I have like this separate thing that I use for my personal life, that I do for like when I'm logged off. This is what I do on my Sundays. And then like I check this like little, it's called Tick Tick. I love Tick Tick for all of my like personal life to dos. But in terms of like work to dos with context, it's just like so much of my role is context switching because I manage 7 people.
So
And I used to like, oh my God, don't make me started about managing 10. That was insane. But I have like a Rick Space Notion page that I keep. I have 3 screens. This like one is vertical, which is Slack. This is like my main focus. And then I have my like Rick Space like Notion page. And I have 2 columns. One of them is to-dos. The other one is like long term. And so for my to-dos, I will have like the things I'm focusing on that I need to get done this week. And as I'm chatting with folks on my team, if it's around career conversations, then I'm like, okay, this is a long-term thing that I will always have to keep on the back of my mind of like giving them feedback or giving them opportunities. Versus for my to-dos, it's like, okay, they're action items. And then as I'm in the middle of a conversation and I look over and I look at my action items that I need to do for this week, I'm like, I don't think I can get to that until probably next week because I also have time blocks on my calendar to do certain things. And during that time block, I'm like, there's just something mental about it because I get a notification that's like, in 10 minutes, you have to go do this next task. And I'm like, oh shit, okay, I need to work on this. And so I always start doing that at the beginning of the week. So that way I can see the flexibility of my time. But usually then if I'm like checking Slack, I don't care what people say, I'm a bad texter. I'm like a very, very bad texter. It's been my New Year's resolution for the past 3 years to get better at texting. As Grace's partner has noticed, I never responded to his text when he stayed at my apartment.
I was like, yeah, Rick never responds to a text.
Yeah, no, I never
That's
respond to
okay.
That's good.
More people should be this way.
But usually, I've gotten a lot better at it now. But with Slack, it's like, if I see something and it's not a priority, I just put unread and I move on. And I just keep things unread. And then it's just a reminder that I'll just get to it when I can. But the thing that had really inspired me was hearing from Drew Holman that Ruben has like 60 unread Slack messages. And I was like, I don't feel that bad.
No.
But I do have like a mental priority where if it's like my team, I'm like, okay, I'll be very, because I am a manager, or if it's from like someone asking about roadmaps or whatever. Or I just respond like, hey, like, I don't really have time to look at this. This is like where you can go. But yeah, it's usually like, you'll be surprised at how much people will like push back if you're like, hey, I'm swamped right now. Like, if you need this, I can drop things, but I just want to let you know. And usually, like, I think that having that organized spaces has like cleared my head so much for context switching, because now I can context switch like that.
Yeah. I love especially the delineation between your to-dos and your long-term things. And that's absolutely something I'm going to steal and try to adopt, because I feel like my work journal has served me so well in being able to get a lot done and focus on like what is an immediate priority. But there are all kinds of long-term things that just sort of float around in the ether of my mind, and God knows when they'll come up next, because they're just sort of lost in there and not written down anywhere. So I think that's really smart and probably a good takeaway for our listeners, that delineating between like the immediate and what's next can be a good way to help yourself context switch more effectively. So I think kind of coming down towards the end here, let's close out by talking about balancing work and life. How do you all make room for family, hobbies, passions outside of data? Because you're laughing a lot, and I wonder if you feel similarly the way that I do, that like DBT can be a hard job to turn off. And that is not that's not a dig at DBT, because this is very interesting work. And I consider myself personally like very lucky to finally be in a job where I'm like, I actually have a hard time turning this off. And because I like it, because I'm interested, because I care about like the impact that DBT has on practitioners. I care about the evolution of the technology. I find it interesting, and I also find it hard to turn off sometimes. So how do you all navigate this? How do you make room for your family and things that are not data, even though everything is data?
Yeah, I think Rick just makes everything data.
That's crazy because it's true.
I'm like, well, if your hobbies are also data, then
then you're good.
No, I actually feel like I have not totally figured this out, but I feel like I have a very good strategy here, but that is not applicable to many people. But maybe there's like a version of it that is, which is that I just try to have a hobby that like requires that I go somewhere at a specific time.
Same.
So for me, I do theater. So this is like, I'm just acting in a play always. And what that means is I have rehearsal at 6 p.m. And so there's nothing to be done. I have to log off and go to rehearsal. And if I come back from that and maybe there's more follow-up things I need to do, I can do that. But it like sections off time of my day that like I literally have to go do this thing. And okay, so maybe not everyone wants to be in a play. Fine. But I think there's like other versions of this, right? Like there's like a drawing club in Denver. Faith, I don't know if you've ever gone to that. That's like pretty fun. Like you just show up and you like draw together. Whether that's like sports leagues or just like making actual plans with friends, family, people that you care about. I think having something strict on the calendar makes pulling away a lot easier because you're pulling away to go do something else that you're really excited about. So that's my like take, is that everyone should be in a play or some other structured activity that requires they log off their computer at a specific time on certain days of the week. I think getting in the practice of that and having something that enforces that is really, really helpful for having that balance.
Yeah, I think that's so smart.
Yeah, go ahead. Faith, I want to hear about you.
Yeah, I do actually. I'm very similar to Grace in this respect. As a side note, I also get called Grace frequently. So like, I might have just like spawned from Grace's rib or something like that. I don't know. But I joined an improv theater that is like a block and a half from my house. And that requires like weekly practice. And so it's a great place for me to turn off the data brain and turn on the silly, goofy, fun brain instead. And if I don't show up there, then I'm letting down my improv teammates. And it's a great way to do it. Like my husband and I have a weekly yoga date on Wednesday nights where we'll like go to this yoga studio and we like qigong and like breathing exercises and meditation and all this kind of stuff. And having those standing dates is so helpful to have a life outside of work. Basically what I'm hearing is like time boxing is great for life and work.
I think like investing too in your life outside of work, because if you don't have things that you're looking forward to or excited about, it's very easy to get sucked into a job that you love. Like I love my job and getting to do it is like very lovely. And so making sure that I like also am investing in hobbies and other skills or things I'm excited about so that I am equally excited about my extracurricular activities.
Yeah, I mean, it like really creates a virtuous cycle, don't you think? Because like if you can make time for creative or exercise or whatever the external hobby is or the activity is, I think like has that effect of like recharging both sides of your brain. I don't get like a lot of opportunities for my like silly goofy brain to come out at work, and having the chance to do that outside of work, I think just like makes it just easier to come back and still be sharp on the job. Plus, like everybody should do improv. It really makes you better at everything. Like,
I was gonna say, Faith, I can't wait to see how the improv impacts your keynote presentation, because I feel like that's gonna be huge.
When I auditioned, I sent them a clip of me absolutely fumbling a joke when I spoke at Coalesce in 2023. And I sent it to Alexis and was like, hey, you should pick me for the keynote because I know how to recover when I ruin my own joke.
I do not do improv or theater, unfortunately, but I do agree that having like a time box thing that you have also financially paid for is really good, and it helps you explore other hobbies. I did that with pottery for a while and like woodworking, and that's how I fell in love with it. But as someone that loves their job and has fully accepted that I actually do love working in data and I love data in general, it's really hard where you're like, well, I love what I do, but it hurts when the thing that you love to do is like burning you out. And I experienced that towards the end of 2023, which is why I took a 3-month leave. And so I focused a lot of my life around not trying to get back to that state, because I think that once you experience it, you're like, I just don't want to experience that again. And so what I have as a post-it on my desktop is like, when I'm working past hours, I have the question of like, does this need to be done right now? Does this need to be done by me? And like, who is specifically asking it for this? And like, what would happen if I don't do this tomorrow? Because so many times I would just work super late, and then the next day I'm like exhausted, and then I could have just done it the next day and have been rested. So I always keep that reminder for me. And my partner, he is also a workaholic, and he like doesn't have like a normal 9 to 5. And so we both have a strict time where we're like, you're not working past this time. And we both hold each other accountable to it. And I think that by us having that, we can like see the other person doing it. And then we're like, don't do that. But wait, I can't do that either. And so one of the things I started doing because of my therapist was I always felt like I had to have this huge plan, and I'm going to commit to that plan that week. And then once I don't do that thing for that week, then I'm not going to do it anymore. And so I would just say like, okay, at least one time this week, I am going to just stop doing work and I'm just going to lay on the floor. I'm just going to lay down and like be still in silence, and then not have my brain be stimulated, because I feel like my brain always has to be stimulated. And then so it's hard for me to like relax after work, because I'm just constantly like trying to like do something that's like not actually relaxing. And so I think that just practicing stillness and just doing like 1 or 2 things a week, because I do my planning on my weekly planning on Sunday. I'm like, okay, what are some things I want to try out this week? Because I, as an ADHD girly, need to have like something new, like the little hobbies that you take on. And so that gives me some excitement outside of work. So I think having that boundary, and then it's like, okay, what am I going to fill that space with? And so I don't use Notion for my life notes. I use Obsidian and it's great. Highly recommend it, because then I have a list of like all the ADHD hobbies that I have collected over time. And then I'm like, okay, what do I want to do? And I go through all of like my little hobbies. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to try baking this. And I also feel like planning things with friends outside of on weekdays. Who knew? Game changer. I have a dinner tonight.
Yeah.
And so I think that also just planning those things ahead of time and like prioritizing it and knowing what is the role that you want work to fill in your life. And if you are seeing that work is encroaching on the boundaries outside of that role, and so you can't actually be living your life, then that's like an important conversation of, is it that you are allowing work to take up that time and like you're not working smart, or is it that you need a new job?
Yeah. Well, a lot of awesome insights and tips shared here today, y'all. To recap a few of them: time box everything, work, life, activities, schedule stuff so that you actually have to go and enjoy life outside of work.
Join an improv
respond
team,
to texts.
perhaps.
Join an improv
Okay,
team.
no one said that. If you want to not respond to text for a little bit because it's not pressing and you have a rapport with that person where they understand, it's okay.
More people should respond to text in 3 to 5 business days, and I'll die on that hill. Like, we should not be accessible at all times. And it
3 to 5
should not.
business days is kind of.
I'd be 3 to 5 business days. That's me. And I responded, I'm like, love you. And
I'm unafraid to respond a month later and pretend as if it has not been a month. I'm like, yeah, what's up? It's like, let's not talk about the fact that 30 days have passed since I received this.
Okay, I will say though, is that if I think about someone, I text them.
Me
And then I
too.
realize that I haven't texted them in a while. I haven't responded. And I'm like, hey, I was actually thinking about you. And I'm so sorry to respond to your text. But I actually came here to say that I was thinking about you.
And that's the duality. Is it's good to, anytime you're thinking about somebody and sending them good vibes mentally, send them that vibe in a text. And you might realize in the process that you didn't respond to their text for a month, and you can fix it then.
But if they call you or say, hey, this is an emergency, and they don't respond right away, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
This is just Rick's life advice now.
I mean, it's excellent life advice, folks. So thanks for joining us today on this episode of The View on Data. Please share this episode with a colleague who might need a reminder to work smarter, not harder, to do some pottery, to join an improv team, whatever it is. Don't forget to subscribe and follow The View on Data on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And join us at Coalesce this October to keep the conversation going with the broader data community. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
The View on Data is sponsored by DBT Labs, produced by Katie Chubb, edited by Jeff Fox, and created by Bolaji Oyejide. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a 5-star review or share with a friend. Thanks for listening.